Okay, it's day 258, and here's the news from Ukraine today. Russia is suffering heavy losses in the east, Kyiv says, as Kherson battle looms in the south. So the Russians just keep just sending wave and wave after a wave into trying to attack, trying to take Bakhmut and other areas in the Donbas, and it's like they have fresh troops, so why not just keep sending them in, just feed them into the wood chipper, and it's just Zelensky talked about how this is just a madness of Moscow's strategy of attack. Um, they're dying in hundreds every day, Zelensky said. The ground in front of the Ukrainian positions is literally littered with the bodies of the occupiers. And so they just keep the same strategy. And it's mind boggling why they would do that to me. Russian forces, this is the ISW, Russian forces have greatly depleted their arsenal of high precision weapon systems and have suffered significant aviation losses and will likely struggle to maintain their current pace as the Russian military's coordinated campaign against Ukraine's critical infrastructure. Okay, and so what's going on here is that the Russian way of warfare is just to devastate what's ahead of you with artillery, but they're running low on artillery. So now they're going to have to change strategies. So this is the Ministry of Defense. The United Kingdom puts out this intelligence update daily, and they said Russia has started constructing defensive structures around occupied southern Ukrainian city of Mariupol. So it's kind of like inverted, where Russia has been the aggressor and Ukraine has largely been on the defense. Now that is flipping, and so the two plants are producing concrete pyramidal anti-tank structures known as Dragon's Teeth for this purpose. And it's in Mariupol, it's in Zaporizhia, it's in Kherson. The Wagner Group, Prigozhin, has claimed the construction of a fortified Wagner line. And all this activity suggests that Russia is making a significant effort to prepare defenses. So again, they're going from offense to defense now. And here's what those dragon teeth look like. It looks something like this, and it's something that will slow down whatever column of whatever is heading their way. And so that's the idea. Russia's stepping up its efforts to build substantial obstacle barriers to slow the advance of Ukrainian forces. So they know it's coming, and they're trying to figure out how to stop it. So my guess is, and I don't know this, I'm not a military expert. I don't claim to be a military expert, but my guess is that what this is going to do is if you're going to have a line like this or multiple lines like this, and then you're going to have enfilading fire coming down upon it, and you're going to have that pre-planned, pre-sorted, ready to go when something comes into the area, or at least you should if you have any smarts. Okay, just a few articles that I just found interesting before we get to the last little bit and then some fun with Russian state media. Office space vacancy in Kyiv exceeds 21%. Now, this only makes sense. I remember reading about the Empire State Building after 9/11 was having a hard time filling vacancy as well, and that's because they were thinking, well, we might be a target next. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're getting bombed regularly, you might be not wanting to lease in Kyiv. So that's what's going on. Then you also have this plans made to rebuild the world's biggest plane destroyed in Ukraine. So the biggest plane is this thing, and it was called the Mira or Myra. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but I remember Zelensky talking about this in the first few days of the war. And I think that Dennis Davdov is right. Dennis talked about this yesterday. This was here. And anytime you can listen to Dennis, he's got a lot of insight. Highly recommend him. But it could be the money could be spent in other places, and it would be symbolic, and so it would be a symbolic win. But I don't know that I would want to spend the money to rebuild this when I could be spending to do something else, even if it's just putting that money into bullets to shoot at the Russians. Okay, and then we have this article. Russia calls up missing cook who was on board warship sunk in April. So there was a cook on the Moskva that apparently died. They just recognized just a few weeks ago, no, actually just a few days ago, that the people that died on there, they just officially recognized it. But in the meantime, what they did was they recruitment office sent the papers, and it said to show up for for your duty when he has been missing in action since that time. You may be prosecuted if you do not appear at the indicated time and place without a legitimate reason. That's from the draft board. So, yeah, it's not a pretty picture, and honestly, when you're trying to run a bureaucracy and you're trying to move 300,000 people, some errors are going to come along, but this was just a particularly bad look. Okay, let's keep moving. So this article was also interesting. Putin needs the war to continue. He can't negotiate his way out of this. Like, people are like, well, where's his off ramp? How does he stop? He can't stop. And I said this a few weeks ago. I did an entire video about this. Putin just can't stop. There's nothing that he can do to just like make peace. He has to win. So does Zelensky, by the way. Zelensky can't just say, yeah, I will just keep that land. He can't. Okay, both sides are being pushed by forces beyond them. It is so, but this is about Putin. It's in Russian President Vladimir Putin's interest to prolong Ukraine conflict as long as possible to stave off a reckoning by his citizens over the invasion. Now, that's quite a perspective. Now, I think the longer it goes, the better it is for Ukraine. But Putin needs it to go longer because of the off chance that somewhere along the way he's going to luck into something, because he can't just, the shorter it is, the worse it's going to be for him. It's going to bring you to that day of reckoning, says Sir Lawrence Friedman. He's an emeritus professor of war studies at King's College. This guy is no slouch. He knows what he's talking about. To stay in power, he needs the war to continue, because as soon as it ends, there is a reckoning. While the war is going on, there is more patriotism and essentially martial law. He's more in control of the situation, but as soon as it ends, veterans returning home and many in body bags, it becomes very, very difficult. So yeah, that's the situation for Putin. He doesn't really have an off-ramp. He can't negotiate his way out. I think he knew that enough to make himself so toxic that Zelensky wouldn't be able to deal with him. And I think that was an intentional strategy. I could be wrong. I'm not in his mind. I don't know, but I think there might be something there. Okay, in other fun, North Korea denies that they're supplying weapons to Russia for war, although our intelligence knows that they've been doing it, but they're denying it because Kim Jong-un is nuts. So, I mean, he's going to continue to deny stuff like that. In other news about denying, we have the U.S. reportedly held talks with Russia on nuclear risk in Ukraine. This was 2 days ago. And then yesterday we saw the Kremlin refuse to comment on U.S. press report about it. And now, with fun with Russian state media, now Russia is not in talks with U.S. over Ukraine, says the deputy foreign minister. Like they think we're stupid. Russia is not engaged in negotiations with the U.S. over Ukraine, a senior diplomat said on Tuesday, signaling, however, that Moscow remains completely open to talks with Kyiv. Now, he may be actually telling the truth by saying, we're not in talks with the U.S. over Ukraine. We're in talks about nukes. That was the topic they were talking about. Like, don't use nukes because it's going to not go very well for you. And so maybe he's just trying to shade it somehow, but yeah. It's just amazing that they would actually say this and publish this, and they publish this in RT, and this is what Russians are consuming. Then another RT article, today is election day. American voters don't need Russian trolls to tell them how bad things are. And so it's going to be a bad day for Joe Biden. We all know it's going to be a bad day because generally the party of the president loses seats, and it's going to be a pretty big swing. I don't know what's happened so far, but there's going to be a big swing, and I'll talk about that again in just a moment. The EU is sucking gas away from poorer countries. Somebody made a comment about this on one of my videos, and they said, well, like oil it's going to float on the market. And that's exactly right. It is going to float on the market. It is going to certain places and not others, but then it's going to go secondhand to somewhere else. It's going to go to Russia's going to send it to some place that it's going to send it to, and then some dealers there are going to repurpose it and send it elsewhere. So that is legitimately what's going to happen. And so where is it going to flow? It's going to flow where the money is. And so where it's going to go to the third world, but then it's going to move from the third world back to other places. Now, what's also interesting about that is I didn't know until yesterday, until Jake Bro. I was watching Jake Bro, and congratulations, Jake Bro. I'm learning stuff from you regularly. This was not this episode. It was maybe there was this episode. Jake Bro talked about this with the first world, second world, third world. I didn't actually know this, and I've lived almost 50 years on Earth, and I didn't know that the word third world arose during the Cold War to define countries that remain non-aligned with either NATO and Warsaw Pact. So the United States, Canada, Japan, South Korea, Western Europe. That's the first world, and then the Soviet Union, China, Cuba, North Korea, Vietnam. That would be the second world, and then those other non-aligned nations, usually poor, mostly in Africa, some Asia, that kind of thing, was third world. And I never knew the origin of that. And I just, I don't know how I didn't get it, but thanks to Jake Bro, when we were talking about sucking gas, I thought, oh yeah, it's kind of like what Jake Bro said. So congratulations, good on you. I learned another thing, build some more dendrites in my brain. Just like Dennis Davdov, I would say watch Jake Bro and you will learn stuff. I say those two without reservations. By the way, it's the midterm elections today, and so again, the Biden's party, that's the Democrats, are going to get a drubbing, and that's all normal and natural. It's not because of Ukraine, and I don't think Ukraine's going to suffer because of it. Ukraine doesn't even come up here when you look at, now this is Pew Research Center from just a few days ago. When you look at the issues that voters care about, it's the economy, the future democracy in our country, education, healthcare, energy policy, crime, gun policy, abortion, you name it. But you got to get all the way down here before we get to foreign policy as an issue. And so where there's a strength of 79% for the economy and inflation and those kinds of things, and there is an effect of the Ukraine war that's having some impact on it, but it's also wild spending during COVID and other things along those lines. Well, there is some impact from there. 79% of all registered voters are interested in the economy, and it's only 54% when it comes to foreign policy, and that includes Ukraine, but it's not exclusively Ukraine, so I wouldn't really worry about it. So the elections are tonight, and so here's the Senate starts with 34 Democrats and 29 Republicans, and I don't know what's going to happen over the course of the night, but my guess is that you're going to see probably a close call, but it may very well go to the Republicans tonight. And in the House of Representatives, they start 0-0 because every 2 years the entire House turns over. And my guess is there's going to be a 30-seat margin or something by the end of it, and there will be Republican control of it. Okay, that's all that I have for the news today. Thank you for your time. I'll be back tomorrow, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.